Thank you very much, and thank you all for joining us and for being here today. I often say when I give talks that our industry used to be an early adopter of technology. If we think back to the GDSs in the era of 40, 50 years ago, and then something happened in the 90s and we became a technology laggard. And my hope is through events like this and all of your guys' participation is that we can take this opportunity to become an innovator among industries again. So thank you for being here and thank you for engaging with these important topics. Now, for the panel that we're going to do today is we're going to focus on how the traveler actually wins from this era of AI. You know, I have a podcast and I speak at lots of events and I often ask people who are going to be the winners and losers of this AI era, and no one ever says the traveler. Some people say the OTA, some people say the supplier, some people say lots of different people in the ecosystem. So we're here with three really smart folks, and they're going to help us understand how we can use AI so the actual traveler wins from this new era. And we'll begin with just quick introductions.
Hi, everyone. My name is Frank Pitsikalis. I am the Senior Vice President of Product Strategy for Hotels with Agilysys.
My name is Will Gilbert, one of the co-founders of Bodhi. I have 25 years plus of systems integrations experience. You know, AI works off data, and having these different integrations gives us that data to do some really cool stuff in hospitality.
Good morning, I'm Carolyn Corda, and I focus on the intersection between data and analytics to drive more value and a better experience for our customers. I've been in the industry most of my career, and I'm a managing director at Deloitte.
Thank you very much. Now, Carolyn, we're going to start off with you. So obviously, a lot of things are changing in the world right now, AI being an important part of that. And what are you seeing from consumers? How should we think about consumer expectations, and how can we think about the changes that are coming at the high level?
So when I think about the consumers, you'd asked the question about, how visible is it to consumers? And I actually think that consumers, when it comes to personalization, whether it's luxury or further down the chain scale, aren't paying attention. They don't care what mechanics are used to actually deliver a better experience or to better understand them. They just care about how it feels for them. And what I've watched over decades is that it's a floating expectation. As soon as we got to the point where you could recognize the guest, you knew that you'd seen them before, well, then it raised up higher that, okay, fine, you recognize me, now I expect you to understand me. Understand my previous stays with you, understand the room service orders and how I've been treated before. And I think we're about to go to the next level, which is kind of like your best friend gets you. And people want to be understood at that level of, get me, understand my motivations, my drivers, what's important to me, and how that varies when I'm on a business trip or on a leisure trip or a short stay, long stay, whether I'm in a place I know, how many times have we been to DC, or a place I don't know. What should I be doing in Paro, Bhutan? So I think that we're going to get very granular, and I think that the consumers are going to love it because it continues this track. And when I talk to my clients, the tension's all on the analytics, and GenAI has more of an analytic vibe to it. And I'm always, my personal signature and battle cry is carpe data, because the data matters, and seize the data. And I say, look, if you're not spending as much attention, if not as much money on the data, understanding beyond the stays you're seeing, how they're traveling when they're not with you, how they're spending money overall, you're kind of missing the bigger picture. And that's what consumers are going to, what you're going to need to have to help consumers feel like, yeah, you get me.
Yeah, I love that answer. And near the end, Carolyn gave you a nugget that's really important. A lot of companies analyze the market through their own data that's inside of their company, and that is an incomplete picture of the market and of your customer. So bringing in other data sources, like Carolyn suggested, I think is really important as we try to build complete pictures. But the most important thing that she said in luxury is that luxury is about the way we make people feel. I'm on the board of a company called Virtuoso. We have lots of really high-end hotels and other very luxury experiences there. And I say to our hotel owners all the time, every one of our hotels has a beautiful marble in the bathroom. Every one of our hotels has a great wine program at the restaurants. But the ones that people with choice, people traveling the luxury category want to go back to, are the ones that make them feel a certain way, and the ones that know them, right? Luxury is personalization, so that was a perfect way to start us off. Now we're going to go to Frank and then to Will. Tell us a bit about what innovations you're working on in your company and why they're pro-consumer.
So one of the things we've done at Agilysys over the last few years, and I agree, it's all about data. And for me, it's not just data that sits in a CRM or some data lake, but it's the data that's immediately available at the staff's fingertips or accessible by guests, so that they can truly personalize the experience, because personalization is really the next luxury. And at Agilysys, what we've done is, over the last few years, not only do we modernize all of our products to be cloud native, but we've also built what we started with, we called it Common Profile, which was just basic attributes about a guest, but shared across all touch points so it's one guest profile and a single itinerary. What we've done recently, and again, because AI, to be able to unlock the power of AI, you really need that data, and data not locked somewhere in a data warehouse, but really the ability to now action that. So what we call it now, it's intelligent guest profile, and it includes their preferences across property, right? So if I'm in the spa and they gave me a herbal tea because that was my preference, decaffeinated, maybe now in the restaurant after dinner, I'm going to be offered a selection of decaffeinated herbal teas. So it's just about listening and about capturing that, knowing at the front desk when a guest arrives, using AI to actually script, to get into the data, know that this guest is an avid spa goer, they like to golf, or whatever it is, they like red wine from California, whatever it might be, being able to suggest things and have AI actually dig into their profile and actually provide a prompt for that agent, whoever's dealing with the guest at that moment, and be able to dig into the data. There was comments earlier about how our industry is so fragmented. And so what we're trying to do is create a unified guest profile that has full visibility into the guest, who that guest, what profiles are related to, who are their golf buddies, who are their family members, and then being able to understand their intention and deliver a more personalized experience.
There's so many different things there that we're doing with Bodhi. And back up a little bit to kind of tell you how we got there. Again, from the systems integrations experience, we've created a platform that's 100% manufacturer agnostic, meaning that we tie in with all the devices and the systems that hotels either have today or they're investing in right now. And with that, we're able to do some really cool things. So number one, from the operations side, since we're tied in with all these different devices and systems, hotels work off many different dashboards. Dashboard for the door locks, dashboard for housekeeping, and all of that. With Bodhi, it's a single pane of glass. It's a single truth for all these different systems to come to. So the hotel's working off just one interface for everything. Especially now with turnover in staffing, hotels sometimes forget how to use different systems. By having one unique pane of glass for them, very easy to train staff and deliver great outcomes. From the guest point of view, we're the only company that can guarantee pretty much 100% guest satisfaction. Sounds bold, but here's how we do that. When the guest shows up to the room, since we're tied in with all these different devices, starting off with the door lock, we know that system is going to work. That key card is going to open that door, or that mobile device is going to open that door. When they get into that room, it's not going to be too hot, it's not going to be too cold, it's not going to be humid. Our super agent is always watching the machine learning side of all the data that we have coming in. Again, from any manufacturer, we're able to ensure that when that guest gets to that room or to that property, all of their stuff's going to work. So, ensuring guest satisfaction through data.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the cool things about Bodhi is they're really integrated into every IoT, every element of the hotel, right? It can change the temperature for you based on if I like to be warm in the morning and sleep cold in the evening, or it can turn your lights on and off, and all sorts of things to really become a remote control. And using that remote control, we can now offer personalization at the room level, right? It can have the right channel on or the right temperature or whatever, which I think is really cool because, of course, in travel and hospitality, our industry lives in physical space, right? Gen AI is really good in words and in digital spaces, but things like IoT, things like computer vision, which we're probably not going to talk about too much here, but I think you should all be thinking about, are really powerful technologies in physical space where our industry actually happens. Now, what we're gonna do for most of our time together on stage is walk through the traveler life cycle and talk about innovations and changes coming there, of course, all with the lens of how the consumer wins. So we're gonna start by talking about the future of marketing and distribution. And we're gonna go down and start with Carolyn and come and have everyone share a few thoughts and come my way. How do you think about the future of distribution and marketing We already heard a bit about smart, intelligent guest profiles. I'm sure some of you are hearing about auto CRMs or kind of smart CRMs out there. So how do you think about distribution in the future of marketing?
In terms of marketing and distribution, in the clients I work with, and I have tremendous sympathy, but the consistent theme is aim higher. When we're talking about merchandising or we're talking about retailing, how do we create a package? How do we bundle things together? The current approach is to think about, well, I can offer a lounge, I can offer breakfast, and you talked about the wine, amenities, that cluster of things. And a couple of dimensions where when we talk about aiming higher, we think we can achieve it. One is being more proactive. Harman talked about the dolphin experience example, where somebody knew they wanted it and asked for it. Well, how about the scenario where you proactively suggest it because you understand them well enough, you get them well enough that that's an obvious thing to put in front of them. So it's about being more proactive. And it's about, as we're talking about the drivers, we're getting to the point, I'm working with clients now where we can bring in data where we see 60 million individual travelers, US travelers, it's all privacy safe, no PII, but data can be appended to a profile where 60 million individuals, 131 billion in hotel spend, 131 billion in airline spend, and then visibility to their mobile patterns, where they go to. Nope. Okay. Oh, it's on. Where they go to in a day, and so that gets to things like: are we somebody who's driven by convenience? Is it somebody who really values how they're perceived on Instagram? Is it somebody who is really about comfort? We have these personas: a Kardashian, driven by clout; a Warren Buffett type, driven by convenience, or if you remember The Big Lebowski, the dude, all about comfort. Who else wears a bathrobe to the grocery store? So the ability to get beyond, what are you trying to buy? What are you interested in at the hotel? What are you interested in when you travel? To who are you is what this data opens up. It's not the first thing that people are going to do, right? We're going to sell the lounge, sell the buffet breakfast. We're going to, create these bundles with the activities. But my clients are beginning to think about, okay, this frontier's out there. We'll get there in maybe 2 years of understanding, okay, you're convenience driven. What does that mean? How do we treat you differently, given that's your driver?
Perfect. And Will, how do you think about the future of distribution and marketing?
For us, by having all the data on how a hotel is functioning and performing, not just the review that people are leaving. I see we have companies coming to us now, looking at the data with us, creating some scores. It's like when you go to book an airline ticket, there could be a sustainability score, right? Wouldn't it be nice when you go to book a hotel room, there's a score of guest satisfaction, not dependent on the review from that guest, but dependent on how the hotel actually was working. Was the air conditioning working? It's kind of like airplanes, on-time arrivals, delays, things like that. How many? What's the percentage of possibility for there to be a problem, or for not there to be a problem? So I think, from a marketing point of view, using that data to be able to show consumers where their highest probability of perfection is what we can do with us.
Yeah, and what I love about that, what's really interesting is, when lots of people are having the debate, OTAs versus suppliers, kind of who is going to win, and one of the pro-OTA arguments out there is that they can verify and guarantee quality, they have insurance policies. If the hotel really sucks, they might let you go into another hotel. But what's interesting about Bodhi is you may be able to provide a layer of kind of guarantee or satisfaction that is outside of the OTA channel, which may be a very strong pro-supplier, pro-operator model. Frank, how do you think about it?
Yeah, as an industry, and Carolyn touched on sort of packaging and merchandising, and as an industry, we really just scratched the surface. A lot of our distribution, to your question, has been around heads and beds. It hasn't been about experiences. And so one of the things that we've been doing at Agilysys to address that is something we call SPEND, which is stay package entitlements, new dynamic booking. And that goes beyond just booking all these experiences a la carte. It's actually about packaging these experiences into a room package that can now be booked online and book all the elements, all of the entitlements as part of that, your spa services, your golf tee times, your dinner reservations, whatever would be part of this package. And now with distribution, that package can be put on, even with traditional OTAs that, again, are just looking at heads and beds. The guest can book it, and it can, and with our PMS, we can actually remove it from availability if the underlying, if I can't play Pinehurst #2, right? It's no longer available. That's part of this package. So I think we need to think about merchandising and how that distribution works in a world of experiences, not just heads and beds.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to come back to dynamic packages and dynamic offers in a second, which is an area I think there's a huge amount of opportunity for all of us. But getting really into the traveler life cycle. So of course, travel planning begins with dreaming and discovery. That's at the top of the funnel. And we all know that the LLMs are beginning to take a lot of market share from Google. Our friends at Skift talked about the demise of Google search. And a few weeks ago, I was lucky enough to interview Rafat, the publisher of Skift, on stage in Vegas, and I asked him to say more about that. And he, instead of looking at me, he turned to the audience and said, and I'm going to ask you to do the same thing, by a show of hands, how many of you are more likely to search something on an AI, OpenAI, Perplexity, whatever, and how many of you are to Google? So if you're more likely to search on AI, please raise your hands. Okay, if you're more likely to search on Google, please raise your hands. Okay, so the AI won, but it was actually more mixed than I would say. What do you guys think? 75-25, is that roughly what we saw? That is more mixed than what I saw at the event that I'm talking about. We saw about a 95% of people raise their hand for AI and about 5% of people raise their hand for Google. So it certainly seems that discovery is changing. We're going to start with Carolyn here. So how should we think about the new discovery? And I'm wondering if you've seen any data. One of my assumptions is that people coming out of the LLM are going to be more qualified than the people coming out of Google, because we all know we ask more complicated questions. We ask follow-up questions from the LLMs in a way that most of us don't ask Google. So my hypothesis is people are going to come out more qualified, and we should see higher conversion rates from the LLMs and from Google. I'm curious what your thoughts on it, if you've seen any data in the space.
Great question. I haven't seen data yet in terms of more qualified. And you're absolutely right that the tide is shifting in that direction. I would expect a couple things to happen. I think you're absolutely right that the thought process is going, and people are beginning to imagine themselves in that trip. And so, yes, they're going to be more qualified. The other thing, and this is backed by research, is that when people begin to imagine for leisure, particularly on vacation, that they actually enjoy the trip more. There's psychologists have studied it, and they think of it as pre-savoring the trip. The more you can get your guests to imagine themselves having the experience, the more they're going to enjoy it. It's actually true after the trip. If you can get them to think about it, send them a recipe because they really enjoyed the lemon cheesecake, that brings back a positive sense of the experience. And in fact, what people are doing when they buy isn't so much buying the experience, they're buying the future memory of that experience. And so the more you can get them thinking in that direction, I think you do end up with greater conversion, as you pointed out, Gilad, but you also end up with you're on a track for a more satisfied guest.
Absolutely. And I want to bring the guys back into this and just move on, because I want to make sure we get through the whole funnel before we run out of time here, and talk about planning and research. And specifically, something that you and I have talked about is dynamic products or dynamic packages, and the ability to use AI to go far beyond the not very dynamic package that we've been offering for the last 20 years. And I think there's a huge opportunity there. So how do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think as an industry, we need to go beyond our current metrics, which is mostly RevPAR, right? We sort of pay our GMs on revenue per available room, and be thinking about more revenue per guest, right? And with that, there's so many parts of a hotel that can be revenue managed and packaged, right? And so that really is more profitable for the hotel, right? So it's like looking at your demand in the spa, looking at demand in dining, looking at demand in golf. There's so many other areas that we apply almost zero revenue management in this industry, right? We focus on just the head and bed rate and don't go beyond what the intention of that guest is to come to this hotel, right? And I think there's a real opportunity with AI and Gen AI when there was in search, because now there's going to be more guests arriving at your brand.com, at your direct website, as opposed to going through an OTA, and how you present yourself there in terms of packaging and offers and being it more personalized, for that guest and what their intention is, and the ability to book all of that. Book my room, book my spa, book my golf, book dining, book a cooking class, whatever it is that I'm wanting to secure, put that all on a single credit card. So the easier we can make it for guests, to Carolyn's point, they'll be more satisfied with the experience and feel more in control. And consumers today want to be in control.
Just to add on to that, because I agree completely, Frank. I think it's interesting because I work with airlines, hotels, and OTAs and casinos. And when it comes to the airlines, hotels, and OTAs, it is interesting that each one of them thinks that they deserve the top spot for packaging and for merchandising, for creating these bundles. Airlines say, "Hey, I'm the first part of the booking process. I own it, so that's where we're going to go." Hotels say, "We are about the experience. People are going to stay with us, for a longer period of time compared to airlines. We own it." And OTAs say this, have their own rationale. And I think the first sector and the first organizations to figure it out will probably win and have a sustainable advantage. But it's my exhortation and the counsel to my clients of don't be complacent. Just because it's taking everybody a long time, or it's a long road. Don't think that you're entitled to it or you deserve it, because there's going to be a lot of competition for that type of packaging.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we're going to bring Will back in a second. We talk about the in-trip and the pre-trip. But I want to quickly talk about booking. And in about 4 or 5 minutes, we're going to open the floor up for all of you to ask us some questions. So if you have any good questions, please prepare. So when I think about the future of booking and distribution, I think of 5 possible futures. The first is that people, and we can use booking a hotel, but you can stick any e-commerce transaction in the same example. So option 1 is consumers will book a hotel on the large language model sites. They'll go to OpenAI, they'll go to Perplexity, they'll go to one of these other places and book it directly there. Option 2 is the incumbents. There are smart people working at Marriott and at Expedia and all these companies, and they're working really hard to try to figure out how they can win the distribution battle. Option number 3 is our phone assistant that we all have in our pockets. And I'll say I think the huge advantage option number 3 has is my phone is likely to know more about me than Expedia or Airbnb ever will, and thus might be in a better position to make a recommendation. Option number 4 is startups, and I'm an investor in a few of these startups, so of course I'm putting my money there. That's another category of potential winner. And number 5 is all the stuff we haven't come up with yet, agent-to-agent commerce, all sorts of other things like that. So my question for you guys is, do you have a bet, or do you have a perspective or a gut on who's going to win in kind of this new distribution and booking landscape?
I think it goes back to the data. It's being open so that you can open up your rates and availability, your packages across the distribution channels and whatever that may look like. So it's about that flexibility is laying the foundation today for whatever that future looks like, right? Because we'd all like to have a crystal ball and know exactly kind of where in my world, I'm Canadian, where the puck is going, but it's really you have to have you got to crawl before you can walk, before you can run. And I think we, as an industry, we need to be, laying that foundation to take advantage of that future.
Absolutely. Carolyn?
I'm betting that it's probably one that we don't know yet, the one that's emerging.
In the long term, that's the safe bet, I think.
It's been 15, 20 years ago. I worked with, it was called Market Derby. It graduated and evolved into Derby Soft. But at the time, it was the idea of being able to put bids out as, not for a group meeting, as if you need 15, 20 people, but 2 people. So I want to go on a weekend with my spouse. I want, this sort of experience. And that would be my bid. And it would go out to a number of hotels. Way before its time, but wonderful to work on with terrific people. And I'm imagining that maybe that's what it evolves to. My calendar tells me, Carolyn, you've been working really hard, as it has, your families. We haven't had time to reconnect. It's time for a reconnect vacation. Here are 3 options for you. I've already sent out bids. This is what the travel companies have come up with. It's the air, it's the hotel, it's all the activities. Which do you prefer? And so somebody's going to figure that out. I think that's the direction. The high-end luxury leisure travel goes.
Yeah, and combining the 2 points together, I think is really powerful thinking about data, right? If my AI agent is going, it could say, hey, Gilad's on the board of Virtuoso, and you're not a Virtuoso property yet. Or it could say, Gilad always spends a lot of money on wine. You should give him a room upgrade so he comes and stays with you. Or the hotel AI might say, you know what, Gilad's AI, we only have 3 rooms left. If you actually want to stay at the same hotel as a conference, you got to book full rate right now. Coming with a lot more information into the negotiation we have now can lead to a lot better outcomes. Now, Will, we're going to give you the last question before we open up for just a few minutes of Q&A with the audience. Talk to us about the pre-trip and the in-trip. How can we use innovation to let the traveler win in those stages?
So in the pre-trip, since we're plugged in with all these different devices and data, we're watching all that data. So we are always looking at HVAC performance, maybe motorized shades. We're talking about luxury environments. And by having all of that data, we're able to enable the staff to know when there's actually a problem. So before that guest shows up, everything's going to be addressed ahead of time. We're able to look at trends in historical data and give the operators a really simple bit of information. We send them a text, an email. We have conversations. We have our conversational AI on our dashboard. We have a fantastic dashboard that you can go through and look at all the different things, online, offline, all the different status analytics. That's all great. But we have one interface for having a conversation with the property. So you can actually ask it questions like, how is my building doing? How many guests checked in last night? And within seconds, having answers to those questions, right? From the in-stay perspective, when the guest shows up, something very unique. Since we're tied in with all these different systems, we're able to send them a text and email on arrival saying, welcome to this hotel. Here's a link during your stay. You click that link, you can walk up to the door, hit unlock. You don't even present the phone to the door, hit unlock. The door opens. You can order food and beverage, control your television. Of course, we have a fantastic chatbot or AI assistant, but we can do more than just ask for towels or ask for the best restaurant nearby. We can actually use it to interact with the guests and say, hey, how is your room? And if the guest says, my room's hot or my room's cold, our super agent is able to go adjust the temperature of the room, make sure that the thermostat is in the correct mode to be cooling or heating, and also lets the property know that the guest complained about a problem. So we're doing a lot more than just doing standard requests and services. We're actually interacting with all the different devices in the room, and letting that hotel know about problems while the guest is there. Because negative reviews at the end of the stay aren't any good. We can get ahead of that in the very beginning.
And I'll add real quick, just the pre-stay. So one of the benefits of having really the guest itinerary, when we send out a pre-stay communication, we can put dynamic content to know the guest hasn't booked spa services yet. So let's put dynamic content in their email to promote them, booking spa services in advance to make sure there's availability. So we can look at what they have or haven't booked and be able to really personalize, that communication and upsell.
Yeah, absolutely right. We all know that the anticipation for a good trip is often just as powerful as the actual trip itself. So whether it's sending music or recipes or stories or ideas that get the customer, the traveler in the mind space is going to lead to a more satisfying trip. And same thing in the post-trip. How can you help me dream about my next adventure? It's likely to both be meaningful to me as a traveler and to increase your repeat usage. Now, we only have a couple minutes left, but I would love to sneak in a couple audience questions. If anyone, saw a hand almost go up. If anyone wants to ask us anything, otherwise we're going to riff on some AI use cases, but I'd love to hear what's on your guys' mind. Please.
Hi, thanks. Carolyn's point made me think agentic AI sort of opens up other options. It sort of changes the mental model you can have on things. Could you riff a bit about what people in the audience should know about how agentic AI is going to open up other concepts?
I mean, there's a lot of opportunities, I would say, with agentic AI in hospitality. I mean, some of the low-hanging fruit are, conversational ordering. So if I'm ordering room service, instead of it, having to be somebody picking up the phone to answer that call, it could be an AI agent and can walk you through the entire order. It could be conversational reservations to book an entire guest journey, book a room, book spa, book golf, dining, all of those things. And I think that there's a lot from agents in terms of revenue management, again, that revenue per guest and making decisions on the fly to maybe limit the menu in the spa because there's high demand and only sell your highest margin services, right? So there's just a lot of opportunities where I think agentic AI can really impact the bottom line.
Yeah, and the thing I would add here, right, is the way we should think about agentic AI is of a swarm. Now, a swarm is a constellation of many bots working together to accomplish difficult things as a collective. Now, the cool thing about agentic AI is right now when you use Gen AI or something else, there's only one agent. And it can only do one thing, and even not that well, right? Anyone who tried to use OpenAI to create slides found out that it's really not that good. What agentic AI allows us to do is to put together dozens and eventually hundreds or thousands of individual agents, each of them doing just one little thing. But by putting them together, they can accomplish an incredible amount of things together. So thinking about what would you do if you had an infinite staff? Where would you put people? What kind of information would you have them collect? How would they share that information with others? Thinking about the way that you could augment your staff with agentic AI is what's going to allow you to open up all these possibilities to doing incredible things in your business that are not scalable today. We're going to sneak in one more, even though the clock is giving us a big zero.
30 seconds.
If anyone has any good questions. Otherwise, I'm just going to finish, first of all, finish with, please.
If I can just add to that on the agentic AI front, on the Bodhi side. So perfect example you just mentioned. If you could hire 300 engineers to run around your building and make sure everything was working, wouldn't you do that? You would. But that's not really scalable. It's not really feasible. Bodhi Super Agent is that virtual technician. It's the one running around, pushing buttons, making sure everything is working before the guest gets there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to finish by saying that the most exciting thing about this era of AI, what I call the great commoditization, is that it's accessible to all of us. You no longer need to be in a very big company or have lots of fancy PhDs around you to benefit from the power of artificial intelligence. So my number one encouragement for all of you, or a homework assignment, if you will, on your flight or drive home, download one of the no-code apps, Lovable, Replit, any of the other, some people call it vibe coding. I really don't like that term personally. But download one of the no-code apps and build an app. Build an app by yourself in 15 minutes. And after 15 minutes, your app's going to suck. But what's going to happen is your entire perspective on what is possible within your business will change. This is a really exciting time for our industry, so thank you for engaging with these wonderful topics, and thank you to our speakers.